And welcome back once again to Capitol Tonight. My next guest has been named to a committee that will attempt to resolve this payroll tax debacle by Speaker John Boehner, assuming that is if the Democrats will play ball. No sign yet. She is Republican Congresswoman Hayworth. She is one of the few lawmakers still in Washington at the moment. She's joining us this evening from our D.C. bureau. Congresswoman, thank you very much for being here.
You bet. Glad to be with you.
So the latest that we know of is that the president implored the leaders of both houses to come together for some sort of an agreement. There's obviously the conference committee that I mentioned that you are on. The Democrats so far have not named anyone to said committee. So are you going to be able to do anything?
Well, we are meeting on the House Republican side, and we're continuing to do all we can to try to bring everybody into the process for the sake of the American people. That's really all this is about. 2 months versus a year for that payroll tax holiday. Every sensible person knows that 1 year assurance is far better for all sorts of reasons. And let's not forget that we also saved Medicare from draconian cuts to doctors that would have made access very difficult for our seniors who depend on Medicare. We had 2-year relief in the bill that we passed with Democratic and Republican votes on December 13th.
You know, I think that most people would agree with you. 1 year is really a heck of a lot better than 2 months, but 2 months is a heck of a lot better than nothing. So I think that, you know, we just talked to a Democratic colleague of yours, Kathy Hochul, and she accuses the Republicans, not you specifically, but writ large, of playing politics. And why not somebody sort of break the logjam here and say, you know what, we'll do 2 months as a Band-Aid, as a stopgap, and then we'll do a year?
Well, Liz, we have the time to resolve this now before the end of the year. There are millions of Americans who work right through the end of December, and I've certainly done it myself in my career as a doctor. So I am more than willing to do my duty for the people I serve, not only in District 19, but for all the American public that's depending on us. And if we're willing to come together as conferees in the House of Representatives on the majority side, then we'd like our colleagues to join us, and we can work this out so that we can give long-term assurance to the American people, longer term at least.
Okay, so I'm confused, though, because prior to this standoff, it seemed that some of your Republican colleagues didn't want the payroll tax holiday extended at all. And now we come to a point where instead of no extension, they're demanding a year extension. Now, this seems to be an about-face. So is it?
No, we reached a consensus, which is what we are obligated to do. We listen to the people we represent. We are the party of tax relief, and not only we, but many of our Democratic colleagues. This isn't a partisan thing at all. This is really about doing the right thing, about bringing common sense to the process. We have time to work this out. We sent a bill to the Senate that had a full year of relief. America's job creators, employers, hardworking taxpayers need long-term assurance, not little patches, to the extent that we can provide a longer period of time in which they can have assurance, then they can plan their lives. That's what they want to do.
Okay, let's hypothesize for a minute. Let's speculate that this doesn't work. I understand that you believe that there's still time. But, you know, some of your colleagues, most of your colleagues are already home. Some of them don't want to come back. They have religious obligations with the holidays. They have family obligations. You had said prior to us getting to this point and earlier in the week that the Republicans were acting in a principled way to do what's right. But if 160 million people get a tax increase because this holiday actually sunsets as it is supposed to, then how can that be principled?
Well, we're determined not to let that happen. We want to go about this in the right way. And let's remember that the president himself called for at least a 1-year extension of that payroll tax holiday. So we are acting in accordance with what the majority of the American people certainly seem to want, with what the majority of our House voted for, and with what President Obama himself said we should have. So this is an issue that's received broad support.
So you insist then that this is not about politics. This really is about policy.
It's not. It's absolutely not about politics. This is about policy. It's hard work that we're doing, Liz, but we are more than willing to do it. We're not taking the easy way out of this, but I want to assure everybody who's watching that we're not going to let people go high and dry as of January 1st. We are doing everything we can to bring this to the most successful and productive conclusion that we can for all the American people.
Okay, and this isn't some Machiavellian effort to actually kill this, because you know that the Senate was only able, in a bipartisan way, to pass a 2-month extender, and that some of your colleagues didn't want any extender at all. So if you call for 1 year and the Senate can't do 1 year, this thing could possibly die.
It's not going to die. Overwhelming sentiment in the House Republican majority is to have that extension. Now we have to provide for it responsibly, which is what we did in that bill, because, of course, our payroll taxes go toward, in this case, toward our Social Security Trust Fund. So that has to be replenished somehow. And we responsibly funded that replenishment so that we could provide that payroll tax relief that people need in this bad economy. We also put measures into our bill that provide for growth in the economy, which is so important. We had a measure to help small businesses write off investments in growth. That was not in the Senate amendment. We had a measure, and of course that was in the Senate amendment. Hooray! So we're not as far apart as people might think. We want to help the Keystone Pipeline come along.
Right. Then that's a pretty controversial issue. But I do want to ask you this. You know, this issue has put you pretty front and center. We have the Speaker putting you on this conference committee. We've seen you quoted in a lot of national outlets, The Hill. We've seen your picture front and center in the New York Times. And, you know, you were elected with support from the Club for Growth, which is a pretty conservative outlet, and also Freedom Works. These are Tea Party, quote-unquote, supported entities. And yet you are now sort of casting yourself as a pragmatist. So do you feel like you've moved to the center?
I have always been a pragmatist, Liz. I never represented myself as anything other than that. We ran a very positive, constructive campaign. We had lots and lots of support from independent voters, and we had a fair number of Democratic voters who came along with us as well. So I am no different than I ever was. My principles are the same. I will always do what I feel is right for all the people I serve. Doesn't matter what their party is, and certainly that's in line with the small government principles, the right-sized government principles that a Club for Growth represents and that Freedom Works represents. So we're all working harmoniously here. We want to do what's right, and I am doing my utmost for the people I serve.
So much so that you have this new Common Ground caucus that is sort of an effort. You started with a Democrat from Rhode Island to socialize in a bipartisan way. You think that that's actually going to ease the tension down in Washington? It's getting pretty nasty down there.
You know, anything that we can do to be good friends and to respect each other and to see each other as real people who have real challenges that we're all trying to solve together, the better off we'll be. And David Cicilline gets full credit for coming up with the idea for the Common Ground Caucus, but I was deeply honored when he chose me to be the Republican freshman whom he wanted to make a co-founder, and I'm very proud of what we're doing.
I also just want to ask you, I'm not sure, since you're in Washington, that you've seen yet some of the statements that are coming out from your would-be opponents, 2 Democrats now you've got running against you, and also Senator Greg Ball, who's a fellow Republican, but he put out this statement that said he blamed you for putting coal in the stockings of the folks that you represent because of this payroll tax debacle. He didn't name you by name, but he did say thank you to the Congresswoman. I think there's no secret that he's talking about you. What's your response to that?
Look, we are doing all that we can. I'm doing all that I can. I am more than happy to stand on my record in terms of voting for tax relief for our citizens. I voted for a full year's worth of tax relief, for 2 years of Medicare security, for extension of unemployment insurance for those who need it, who need that federal help. So I have done my duty to my utmost, and I'm very proud of the fact that we passed an excellent bill through the House on December 13th that provided that long-term relief.
Well, Congresswoman, and if there is actually an 11th hour deal, I hope you can come by and explain it to us and maybe take some credit for it. In the meantime, I want to wish you a happy holiday season.
And to you as well. Thanks, Liz.
Thank you. All right, so still to come, what can be done to lower your